Bernard-Henri Lévy is here. He is a philosopher, he is a writer, essayist, and also a filmmaker. He was on this broadcast in the United States earlier when he had made a film about Bosnia, and he came to promote it in the United States, and I had the pleasure of his company at that time. I am pleased now to have him join me in Paris, especially at this time, in the aftermath of the French election, as we try to make some sense of it. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you.
Tell me, what do you think? You were just saying to me before we went to camera that it was, in a sense, more tragic for Chirac than it was for Mitterrand when he would lose a majority in the parliament.
I told you that there was, on my eyes, something tragic in the destiny of Jacques Chirac today. His loneliness, absolute loneliness, nobody with him. All his friends accusing him to be the author of the defeat. When Mitterrand lost, he lost some polls, of course, but first he lost a little. Chirac lost. It is a big gap between him and the others. And when Mitterrand lost, I don't know how he did, but he created the impression that his government lost and that he, Mitterrand, brought the power again. You know, it was always the others who lose. And he, Mitterrand, was the man who came and bring the power again. Chirac, no. Chirac is accused by his friends today, by his party, by all his rivals in the right ranks, to be the only guilty man of this historical defeat. So there is something tragic in that, and something handsome in this destiny, tragically handsome.
Why handsome?
Because such a defeat, such an absolute defeat, such a loneliness, he's lonely as nobody was never lonely in such a supreme power place, has something which is not ordinary, not vulgar, like in a, I don't know.
This appeals to your sense of drama,
yes,
your sense of literature. He becomes a tragic figure, almost a novelistic figure for you.
Of course, I think that
because he's alone
I think
at the
that
top.
a novelist today could be inspired by what happens in the head of Jacques Chirac. Why did Chirac make this election, this dissolution, for instance? Why?
Why?
He has such there are many hypotheses. I think that he was, je pense qu'il s'ennuyait. I think he was, how would I say that? He was, he did not know what to do. He was in this castle of Élysée without real power, without driving really the power.
But he had a majority in the parliament.
Majority, we did not do anything. He has a prime minister who was too much alike him. In the French use of power, generally since de Gaulle, the prime minister and the president are of the same tendency, of course, but different. A sort of opposition or a sort of a conflict between them. And when there is not this conflict, there is something which does not work. Juppé was a sort of clone of Jacques Chirac, a sort of double of Jacques Chirac. It was the same. You shut the eye, you close the eyes, you hear Juppé, you hear Chirac. They were the same. So what can you do when you are in the castle of Élysée and you have a prime minister who is just the same as you? You just sleep. You just go. You just sleep. No. So to awake, of course. So to get away, to wake up again.
Yes.
Maybe Chirac said, "I'm going to make." You know, the presidential polls 2 years ago. There was one turn, two turns, and he made the third one, the third presidential turn of the polls.
Yes.
Right against left, again body to body. He liked that, Jacques Chirac. He was asleep, so he woke during making the third turn of the polls.
Would it have been different if he had another prime minister, if he had fired Juppé 6 months ago and then had an election?
He could have won, of course.
Could have won?
Yes.
So what happens to Jacques Chirac now for the rest of his term until the year 2002?
Nobody knows that. In France, the presidential power is, symbolically speaking, a strong one. So it should resist. Second, Lionel Jospin, the new prime minister, has interest.
Here he is in L'Express.
President Bis, he has interest to keep Chirac and to keep him not too weak. It is his interest, I suppose.
Who is the more powerful person in France today, Chirac Jospin.
This one.
More powerful than the president.
I think so. I think so. I think so. We used to say that the supreme power is the president, but in reality, in this situation, with such a weak president, which might have no party in the next weeks, because his party, the Gaullist one, the party of General de Gaulle, RPR, is escaping from his hands. His other people of RPR, like Balladur, like Pasqua, are trying to make the hold-up on the RPR. So weak, without party, defeated, having lost his reputation of good politic. Chirac was supposed to be sort of expert.
A survivor forever.
Yes. So in this situation, he might be the most powerful.
But Jospin has no agenda, no mandate. All he said is, I'll put the brakes on. I'll slow it down. Europe, I slow it down. Change it, maybe. Cutting the budget, slow it down. Eliminating jobs, slow it down.
It is not so simple. No.
No plan, no vision, no sense of France's destiny.
I'm not so sure. I'm not. There will be a choice now to in Jospin's life and in his government. You have two sort of people. You have people who have a real choice, a real vision of the future. The Hubert Védrine, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Strauss-Kahn, Minister of Economy. They are people who have the sense of state and who want to build France and Europe. If he hears to these men, it can be a big mandate, and it can be a good period to do Europe, to achieve the European process.
But you were friends with Mitterrand?
I was, yes. I knew him well, a friend. Before he was president, I was close to him, before 81. After 81, I went further.
And you had violent disagreements over Bosnia?
Over Bosnia, yes.
You felt like that he could have done much more, and he did not do it.
He could have made more. He lied.
It was an immoral act, you thought.
Yes, of course. He lied, and he was immoral about Bosnia, and not only about Bosnia. And one of the merits of Jospin, this we cannot deny him, is to break with this Mitterrandist immorality. You know, he breaks with the age of Mitterrand, and this is not a bad thing for the French left.
Your heart is with the left.
Of course.
Your brain is with the left.
Yes, heart and brain. Yeah.
Yes, and you believe...
But with critics, of course, with distance, with méfiance. I'm not with complete faith, you know. Many things can happen. I don't know.
France has to be a part of the way the world is going, globalization, participating in the future. It's not a threat to the French culture. Why aren't you enthusiastic about making France more competitive in the world, in the global economy?
Because I think that the French culture, as far as this is what I know a little, French culture is able, has inside itself the ability to face the world,
of course,
and to resist it. So I'm in favor of globalization, of course. We have not to build. I think it would be absurd to build borders, frontiers around us.
So you're in favor of Europe,
to protect, of course,
and the euro currency and all of that.
I'm in favor of European currency. I was since a long time against anti-Americanism, for instance. I don't think that American culture is a real threat to us. Few people think like that in France, but I think I think French literature, French cinema, French culture are strong enough to resist even big America. I think so.
What makes you think so? When you look at the impact of America, you cannot walk down the streets of Paris without seeing America.
Of course.
You cannot go into any cinema list of films.
And when you go, you cannot walk in American university without finding the trace or the book of a French philosopher.
Well, that's true, but what new recent French philosopher?
Many. And maybe
Derrida?
maybe universities are as important as streets. Of course, you have McDonald's in the streets of Paris,
Yes.
and you have Derrida in the universities of
Yes.
Michigan.
Yes.
What is the more important in the eyes of eternity? I
don't know.
let you decide.
How about Bill Gates?
You have Bill Gates, yes, of course, and you have Derrida, Michel Foucault, Jean-Paul Sartre.
Yes, you do.
Jean-Paul Sartre or Bill Gates?
Yes.
That's the question of the next century. I'm
Existentialism or the computer, that's it?
yes.
The computer is going to win.
But Jean-Paul Sartre would write today with computer.
Of course he would.
He would, and he might use email. Today, France is really going to choose between two ways.
What are those two ways?
One way is modernity, is culture, is opening to universality, and so on and so on. And the other way is closing borders, going back to archaism, refusing Europe, making some deficits in the budgets, and so on, and cooperation, and this and that. But this is a story of France since 1 century. Since 1 century, France was divided between the two ways. One way to go back and one way to go further. It is a battle since 1 century.
And where was de Gaulle in that choice?
De Gaulle was a strange man. All his culture prepared him to be an archaic, of course. He was shaped by this vision of the world. He was a Maurassien, a disciple, a pupil of Charles Maurras.
Right.
But the circumstances of life, the courage, all that made him the chief of resistance, the man who
During the war.
embodied during
Right.
the war, the modernization of France afterwards, and so on. But he's a sort of miracle. He's a sort of living paradox.
And he was also sui generis.
And sui generis. Nobody will be like him, and nobody was like him. You know, he is a sort of, like in Greek, an apax, which is a word which happens only one time in a language. You know, an apax, a word which you don't find twice in the language.
Yes. That was de Gaulle.
De Gaulle was that. He was an apax.
Does France need a de Gaulle today to help it come to grips with this dramatic point?
If we had one, we would not refuse.
But there's not one.
But there is no one, no. And if we had one, we knew. We would know. We don't know. And so we have not. And we need, of course. Of course we need. The politician class is strongly defeated, discredited, disqualified. What we did not speak about is that we spoke about Jospin and Chirac. There is a third man,
Le Pen,
who is not the less important, unfortunately. And this
He's
elections,
more important because of the election?
of course, because he is a sort of central man today of the political game. And he might be, he is already the third party of France. Socialist Party, Gaullist Party, and Le Pen, the Fascist Party, number 3. And he might come, if the left fails in the few months who come, or the few years, in the following years, if left fails, Le Pen could become the chief of the first or second party in France.
Le Pen has asked Chirac to resign. He wants to see, tell me if this is right, he wants to see the socialists have a chance and fail, but he wants to see the right and the center right in disarray,
Of course.
so that he and the National Front
Of course.
will be the dominant party of the center right.
Of course, in all the history of Europe, the main enemy of extreme right has always been right. Enemy of extreme right is not left. In the Nazi period in Germany, the strongest quarrel, the strongest battle is between extreme right and right. When extreme right has been defeated in Europe, it is always because the rightist parties resisted. When they resist, they defeat the extreme right. When they kneel, when they don't resist, extreme right comes. So today, there is a big affair in the hands of the rightist parties of Chirac and the others. They have our destiny in the hands. If they resist, they can defeat Le Pen. If they don't resist, if they continue to battle between them, if they continue to quarrel as they do since a few days in a ridiculous way, then Le Pen will appear as the only sauveur, the only left man of the right, and this will be a catastrophe. It was unthinkable a few years ago. Nobody could think that Le Pen could become such an important man. Yeah. In a few years, Le Pen can be the man who makes a difference, and if he makes a difference, he can seize power. Yeah. This is no longer unthinkable, and he can be defeated and marginalized. I don't know. It will depend on the political powers, the counter-power, the intellectuals.
Yeah. To Chirac's credit, he's never reached out to make him.
This is true. This is true, of course. Chirac was always strong on this point. And he will have to be again, because what I can predict you today is that in the following days, in the following weeks, you will hear on the right side of France more and more voices who will say, please, let us manage with our extreme right. What you leftists did with Communist Party, let us do it with our extreme right. We shall make alliance with them and we shall try to eat them. This will be an absurd process, but some of them will express that. And I hope that
And if Chirac, they do that, it is the seeds of their own destruction, because...
If they do that, they're dead. They're killed, because Le Pen is stronger than them. You know, when Mitterrand made alliance with the Communist Party was already declining, you know, and Mitterrand was a strong man. He had many bad sides, but he was a strong man, and Communist Party was already going down. Now Le Pen is going up, right is going down, and they will be completely absorbed, they will be eaten. If they make this mistake to give the hand to Le Pen, they are dead.
What do you love more, politics or the cinema?
First, sometimes it is the same, as you know, and not only in America, in France too. And I would say that I love more cinema, of course. I don't like politics so much. You ask me about it, so I try to, in my pitiful English, to express it. But
you love cinema more. Why did you become a movie maker, a filmmaker?
To continue my adventure, my personal adventure.
What is your personal adventure?
Books of philosophy, novels, theater, and at one time, what I had to say went through cinema. I wanted to write, no longer with words, but with the eyes of Lauren Bacall, the
actress who was in your last film,
the smile of Alain Delon, the body of my wife, Ariel Dombal, and so on. You know, a movie maker is a writer who writes with bodies and faces, and is a fetishist who writes with pieces of body. And this is a new writing. I wanted to try this new sort of writing.
Were you ready?
I think so.
You were?
I think so.
Why did you fail?
Because they were ready to kill me too. They were ready to kill me too. They were ready to kill me.
Why? Because you were too brash, too arrogant, too cocky, too...
I think so.
All of that.
Cocky, I don't know what it means, but arrogant maybe. No, first because...
You don't know what cocky means, or it means too confident, too overbearing.
Yes,
too,
I think so. Yeah, not bearing, but first...
He thinks too highly of himself.
First, I had in this country enemies since a long time on many fields, philosophical field, political field, and so on. So when you gather so many enemies in 20 years of a life, of a public life, and when you make such an enormous thing as a movie, which is like a target, such a big, target. Visible and good target.
Right. Yeah, you sit there.
Like that. You make the movie, all the enemies come there. And second, my mistake maybe was that the movie was too... I was not too arrogant, but the movie was arrogant. It was a big movie with great actors, shot in Mexico with a big, enormous technical team, très ambitieux, very ambitious.
So how do you feel about it, the fact that it did not succeed?
Bad.
Bad.
I felt very bad after. It was in last
Depressed.
February. I would not say depressed because it is not my sort of being. Not depressed, but I was sad, of course. Yeah. When you devote
poured all your life and
2 years of your life, 2 years of your passion, your more secret dreams and aspiration, and when it fails.
But do you blame the critics and those who are out to get you, those who wanted to shoot you down,
no.
Or do you say, I must have done something wrong?
I blame myself.
What do you blame yourself for?
To have done something wrong, which is not the movie. But the life of an artist, of a writer, of a movie maker, whatever you want, is always like a war. Like a war. You are never in peace. It is like a war. All the artists have always been in war. And when you lose war, you are guilty of it. You had a bad appreciation of the rapport de force, of the forces relationship. You did things bad. You underestimated the adversary, the other. You overestimated yourself, and this is a fault.
And part of this is why you find the plight of Jacques Chirac so interesting right now.
Maybe. You got it.
Tell me how you see America, us. Political leadership, our future, our culture. What's your judgment of us? Do you look with a certain... Did you ever say, I wish I was there?
No.
Working there?
I would not live in America. I don't think so. Okay. I don't think so. But I like America. As I told you before, I hate in my country and in Europe what I would call primary anti-Americanism. Mm-hmm. This is an old tendency of French culture, which is the worst which we have here, stupid. What I would say is that you have a big unhappiness today, a big drama in America. You have a big drama which happened to you, which is, and to us too, but more to you, which is to have lost your enemy.
Russia, the Soviet
Russia,
Union.
Yes. And
communism.
When a body loses his adversary, his enemy, it is as if you lost the wall against which you lean. Yeah. You lose the wall and you can fall. And there is something like that in America. The America was the structure of the country, of the ideology, of the politics, of whatever you want, was for a big part organized on this idea, maybe phantasmatic, no matter, phantasmatic or not, it is not the problem, was organized, was shaped by this idea that the world was divided into two and that you had this Soviet Union and so on. To live without an enemy, to continue to live without an enemy is a great problem for a man, for a body, and for a country. And it might be the problem of America today, the internal problem of America.
There is something to what you say, I think. I mean, there is a feeling of confidence in America, but there is no feeling of mission, no sense of what our mission ought to be. We've got internal problems, whether it's race, income inequality, too much poverty, a need to make the educational system better, a need to build the infrastructure, a need to do a lot of things. Every nation state has demands. Also a battle about what ought to be the role of government, a battle that's now being decided here, You, as a nation, seem to me to be much more of a status society than we are. Much more, for reasons I'm not sure we talked about.
Maybe too much, yes.
You are too much,
maybe.
And we are...
You are not enough.
Not enough. And we are in an era of less government, and the ascendancy is that idea. Yet at the same time, we reach a point, as we did in terms of the negotiations between Gingrich and Clinton, which led the United States, which led Clinton to gain the ascendancy in terms of the politics because it threatened the social contract. And many Americans at that time said no. They thought it means taking away Medicare. It means reducing my Social Security. That was the spin. So they went through that political battle. I'm interested in terms of where the social contract is among people and their government in various parts of the world and how they're dealing with it. Tom Friedman says most of the conflicts now between are within countries rather than between countries. And that's true in Africa, in Europe, in China.
Of course, and in America too.
In America too. Yeah. Except that we
riots,
have a prosperous economy, a dominant place in the world because of our military power, and therefore a larger challenge.
This is the consequence of what is also the consequence of what I said before. The external conflict, which does not exist, becomes a sort of internal conflict. And what you call the social contract, I would say the social link, this is what is threatened today, the social link as itself. Will it survive the next years? I'm not so sure, of course. You have... What we lost also with the communism, we lost something else with the communism. I was not communist at all, as you know. But the communism had in the whole economy of the ideas of the world one merit, one good thing. He created the idea that the time as itself had a meaning, has a direction, that tomorrow will be different of today. The time had a direction, like a river, you know. And this is the idea which is vanishing, which is disappearing. And today, if you go in a suburban area of Los Angeles or of New York, and if you ask people, what do you think of tomorrow? For the first time in the history of the human being, everybody has lost the very idea that time could be pregnant of something. Time is not waiting for anything. Tomorrow will be like today. Tomorrow has no chance to be better than it is today. This is a new thing. Never this happened. In the Christian ages, you had this idea that tomorrow will be different of today. In the Marxist age, you had the idea also that tomorrow could be different of today. For the first time in the history of man, today, you have no such an idea. Tomorrow will be same or worse as today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Much success. You will go back to filmmaking as soon as you regroup, as we say.
Of course.
Thank you. Terrific.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for Conversations from Paris. Tomorrow night, more conversations, this time with Luc Besson, the French director, and also Claude Picasso, the son of Pablo Picasso. See you then.